Hey, everybody. Welcome to Munro Live Podcast. And I'm here with Doug DeMuro. And I am delighted to have Doug here. I've known about him forever. I guess everybody else has as well. You got about, 8 million people that watch you on a daily basis. And anyways, Doug, welcome here to Munro Live.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate being on it. It's great.
Oh, I think it's going to be wonderful, actually. So, I guess the first thing I'd like to maybe get into is how did you manage to go from a YouTube star to running? It's got to be one of the biggest online car purchasing systems on the planet.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, it's an interesting thing. That's a great question. And I tell all of my YouTube colleagues the exact same thing, which is if you're doing YouTube, you never quite know when it's going to end, and you never quite know when it's going to stop working. And so it's important to kind of start your own thing and start your own where you can be you have a little bit more control over the audience and of what they do and what they see, as opposed to the YouTube algorithm, which, you never really know what's going to happen there. And so it was important to me to start a business, and it seemed like there was some space to do that here. And so about 3 years ago tomorrow, actually, we launched it.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, happy birthday to Cars and Bids. And it's crazy. I mean, of course, we launched it right at the height of COVID in early 2020, in June of 20, and we thought that it was going to fail right away. And of course, what actually happened is, we launched into like the greatest car market in the history of the automobile. We didn't really.
Yeah, definitely the used car market. That's for damn sure, man. Whew.
Right.
Wow. Well, actually, I was looking at, just doing a little research, and you have several cars that I'd love to have. Most of them I couldn't possibly afford, but one of them, I couldn't believe it. It's a 1991 or something like that Bentley, and I worked on that car. I worked on the design of that car. I was shocked. It was only $2,200. I may have to ask my wife about it. Yeah.
Let me see which one. Hang on, sorry.
It's about mid.
Yes, yeah, $2,200 now. But I mean, the thing about those auctions is all the bids really come in on the last day, so I suspect it's going to end up a lot.
Well, there you go. I was thinking it for $2,200, honey, please. Yeah, actually, at that price, I've noticed quite a few people are buying older cars that maybe got a wrecked engine, or maybe the suspension is still in good shape, but the guts are gone. And they're turning them into electric vehicles, and that must be. Is that anything that you've seen as well on your?
Not at the level that I thought we'd be seeing it. I assumed. I agree with you. It's starting to happen, but I assumed it would happen more, and I think it will happen more. But I kind of thought there would already be some big industries like, let's do this. Let's turn these old cars into electric cars. And it hasn't quite happened as much as I want. I personally really would love to do it. I have an old Land Rover that I love, but it's like the least reliable piece of crap you'll ever possibly.
Actually, I want to talk to you about that too. Yeah.
I think doing an electric swap in that car would be cool, right? Like that would add. I would still be able to enjoy it, but that would add a lot of reliability, frankly. And for some of those cars, like old Corvettes, you want to hear the engine, whatever. But there's a lot of them where Volkswagen buses and old Land Rovers, where it's not like the engine is really like a component of the experience, and it would be better electric swap. So I'm sure that's coming.
Well, I tell you, when I was at the Electrify Expo in Long Beach, some guys there had taken a Corvair and turned it into an electric car. And they really didn't change much. And I had, there was some lady with me, I can't remember her name, but anyways, she had come to the booth and whatnot, and she just wanted to hang around and see what I saw. So anyways, I went over and I says, let me show you something. This car right here has not been modified. No one has, tuned it up. And I said, look at these gaps. Look at how mismatched everything is. Look at this. Look at that. A car that came from that era, the 60s and early 70s. Wow, what a crock you were getting when you bought a car in those days. I mean, it was nothing but.
Yeah, I think that's totally reasonable. I think about that a lot, that like every time I get into a 90s car at night and I turn on the headlights, I think to myself, I can't believe we put up with this crap. Like we considered some of the things that were considered to be cutting edge, like the panel gaps in the 60s and the headlights in the 90s. You get into these cars now and you're just like, really? We thought this was good?
Exactly. What were we smoking? What were we drinking? Somebody fall down and hit their head or something? No,
right. But I guess it just sort of is how it works, like time marches on, and by modern standards, it's so hard to look back at some of these cars and not just think to yourself like, what the hell? But that's how it was.
Well,
evolution of
believe it or not, lived through it. I can tell you for sure that what they used to say when you brought your car back because a wheel fell off. Well, they're cranking these cars out at every 60 seconds. What do you expect? A couple of little flaws here and there? Suck it up. That kind of stuff. And you did. You just bought into it.
Right,
so.
Right, I mean, the great proof of that is the fact that all these older cars had 5-digit odometers, right? There was no concept that you were ever going to be able to get that.
That's not going to happen. Well, there was two reasons for that. One, if you did manage to go over 100,000, you could lie to your friend. In fact, I can remember taking, watching guys undo the speedo because it was mechanical. Undo the speedo cable. And shove a electric drill in there and run the stuff backwards. So you know what they did? They put a scraper on the inside of the odometer. They put a scraper in there, and if you did turn it backwards, it would scrape off all the numbers. So that everybody caught on to that in a hurry. Then what they do is they take the speedo out, put a new one in, spin it forward because you don't have any problems. And when you got to about, 30,000 miles, hey, pedal out, baby. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And no one would notice the fact that there's huge black smoke coming out of the back end and it smells like a forest, or actually more like an oil well rig. Yeah. It was.
It is interesting. That is another thing that we put up with. I mean, up until very recently, mechanical odometers, but Carfax started to put a stop to that. And then now, of course, all cars have electronic, gates, but it would be too hard to do it, except probably there's software. You probably could do it with some software, but with Carfax, it's not really possible.
Well, I don't know. Anytime somebody says software, is impossible, then boom, there's somebody can go and do it. So. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's true.
But hey, you know what? You brought up your Defender. I have got to tell you, I looked when I saw you had a Defender. I wanted to buy one, a '97 as well, and because we were working with Rover, we were working with BMW. BMW owned Rover, and our job was to shine them up, and sell them as quickly as possible to whoever would buy that stuff. So we had the Range Rover, the Disco, and the Defender to try and see what we could do to help it out. And you know what I wanted to do is I wanted to buy the rolling chassis, and I would have had to take the engine with it, but the rolling chassis, and I was going to bring them to the States, and I was going to turn it into the Judge Dredd mobile, because that was what was underneath. If you saw the movie Judge Dredd, that vehicle that Sylvester Stallone was driving around, that was a Defender, and they just put. In fact, if you go to what's the name of that place? Anyway, I'll come to me later. Anyway, if you go to where the museum is in Britain, it's sitting out there. One of them's sitting right there. It's got a plastic body and whatnot. And if you're bold enough, you can go into the mud hole that it's sitting in and looking, peer in the windows and stuff like that, and you can see where they mounted cameras and crap. I'm telling you, I figured I'd bring that son of a gun back. I'd put basically I was going to put an exoskeleton kind of a deal on, just like what that car had. Only I wouldn't waste my time with like fiberglass would take forever. So anyways, I put something on top of it, and I wanted to sell that car, the Defender, and call it the Dreadnought. And I'm telling you, I thought I had it. I thought it had it all swallowed up. I talked to Dr. Reisler. Wolfgang Reisler was a guy who basically hired us, and he was the president of Rover, but he was also I'm not sure what his. I think he was the president of BMW. All I know is that him and Bernd Fischer-Schroeder didn't get on. But anyways, I thought this would be great, and then all of a sudden I started hearing, "Wow, I don't think that's going to work out, Sandy. They don't want that car in the United States." So anyways, I didn't do it. But I thought
That's so funny. I never knew that thing was the Defender or anything. But as I look at it, people have made their own, and they put like Land Rover logos on it and stuff. So I guess how funny.
Well, it was supposed to be
terrible vehicle.
The last vehicle that could possibly survive on the planet. When in actuality, I had they gave me 2 or 3, I can't remember, Defenders, Discos, and a Land Rover, and or Range Rover, and my wife's, or she was my girlfriend then, she wouldn't drive with me. She said every time we went past the microwave things for phones and whatnot, if it was too strong, the car'd stop. There was a thing called Signal Hill in Britain, and if you drove up there, you were going to get stuck, and that's it. You could turn the car, push the car in the opposite direction, and you could roll down the hill. Yeah, they were in such bad shape. They had we had to go. I wasn't part of the team, but we had to come up with good reasons why California would allow the Rover vehicles in the country, or in California. They wanted them banned because there were so many complaints. I mean, they just stop. That's it. Yeah, that's enough. Yeah, I've had it.
Well, it's a terrible car. It's a terrible car. I don't know what the hell I'm doing with it. I don't really want to own it, but it has become this situation where it's this, it's bright yellow and it has no roof, and we use it in the summer on the beach, and so my family has grown obsessed with it. And so they're always like, "Oh, we got to keep it." But meanwhile, they're not the one.
Have to keep it running. Yeah.
My wife's always telling me, "Oh, I have to keep it," and then I find myself in October in bitter cold driving it to the storage facility in Rhode Island, thinking, "Where am
I thinking? Something's wrong here." Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, one thing I will tell you that I did do, and I had a lot of fun at, was I took the Camel Trophy racing. I took that course twice. One time it was in a Defender, and the other one was in a Discovery. And man, those, when they're running, they were near impossible to stop. Yeah.
No, that's exactly right. When it's running, it's a great car.
Yeah.
But it isn't always, and it's had some. There have been some days. There was, for example, there was the time where the accelerator cable became disconnected from the powertrain, and I got under there, and I was able to, using a keychain, I was able to reattach it, which of course I'm like then driving around with a keychain keeping my accelerator cable. I'm thinking to myself, like, this is a horrible thing. So I get home and I go to check it to see, like, how is the keychain holding up, and I pulled the cord for the hood latch and it snaps. So I can't get out of the hood.
Perfect.
The only thing keeping me going is a keychain, and I have no idea if it's about to melt and burn the whole car down because I can't even get it out. And that was in 2018, and I will never forget that day. And I hate that car, but it's great. It's so much fun. It is just so much fun, and it makes everybody so happy. And so,
well, the thing is too, it in true British fashion, you have a car like that and you're always mucking. It's the term in England. You're always mucking with it, which means that, you've got something to do, keep you busy, keep you away from the pub and
Well,
and the
that's
wife.
one of my big things about it. People come up to me all the time and they say, "Hey, I want one of these." And I tell them, like, I don't think you do. Like, you only want one of these if you actually want to be messing with it. Like you said, like if you know what you're doing, yeah, you want one of these. If you just think it looks cool, you're in for a world of hurt.
Well, some people are masochists. Sometimes you got to do what's right. Let them have it. If it was up to me, I'd say it's for sale.
I really have this belief that you got to be an enthusiast, because if you're not, if you're just like it because you think it looks cool, then, and this is true of kind of any vintage car, if you just think it looks cool, you're going to realize quick, driving it and owning it is not like buying a Honda. It's a whole different thing, and you really need to be an enthusiast.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, like I said, I had a Morgan Super Sport, which was far better than pretty much anything that came out of England, because it was hand built, and those guys really took care to make everything work. Plus, to get at the hood, all you had to do is click, and you roll it up. So it was a whole different driving experience as well. But I will tell you that the day of my brother's wedding, I get in the car. I'm in my little tuxedo, and it didn't have a key. You went in back of the dashboard, and it was made out of wood, and you pushed the button, and that started it. I pushed the button, and all of a sudden, whoosh, and there was all this black smoke coming from underneath the instrument panel, and I'm going, "Oh my God!" I'm supposed to be at this wedding, and my car's on fire. But that's the thing about some of the. And I also had a what do you call it? A 1958 Jaguar 150S type, which was a great car. But again, when you needed it to be your friend, it wouldn't cooperate. It just didn't happen.
Right. You can't really count on these cars.
No.
You can't use them as transportation.
Oh, I tried.
Especially at this.
Yeah.
Right. It's not a feasible thing.
But you've got quite a few cars that I can't even imagine. This is like you got a Ford GT, and you got that Porsche and the McLaren. I can't even imagine Lamborghini.
I don't have a McLaren, thankfully, but I do have the Carrera GT and the Ford GT. But no, I haven't pursued personally any form of McLaren. That seems like a recipe for trouble, to be perfectly honest.
I'll tell you, we worked for McLaren on F1 for quite a while. If you want trouble, deal with Ron Dennis. That's trouble. Holy mackerel! The guy is. You'd have to see it to believe it. He doesn't like any mess. If there's anything, like, he would come into my office and he'd probably have a heart attack or a stroke right there, because he is uber. He wants, and when you left at night, if you had a pen on your desk, and he used to walk around to all the offices, if you had a pen on your desk, you would be getting a nasty gram, no question about it. Yeah, it was, but I'm telling you, the inside of McLaren, have you ever been to McLaren's headquarters? Oh my God, it's like a spaceship landed in the middle of a pond. You go downstairs underneath the pond, up the other side, and then you're in the most uber modern building imaginable. Everything is really expensive. Yeah, but the McLaren car, we were trying to bid for that to get on it from, most people hire us to try and make sure that their car is going to be function properly and hit their cost and weight and quality targets. But I didn't get that job. We didn't get that job. Somebody else outbid us or something. I can't remember, because McLaren says, well, aren't you going to do this for free? But because after all, you'll be able to tell your friends that you worked on a McLaren. And then, and by the way, you can't really tell your friends you worked on a McLaren. Sign this piece of paper here. Yeah, so it was unfortunate.
Yeah.
But you do have oh, that was the other thing. I saw you selling a Lotus. Man, I don't know. I don't know. I've never seen you that animated. Certainly, you must have taken. I didn't. I looked at your history for education. I didn't see anything about used car salesman. But man, that was that was a riot. I had to watch it twice. I thought it was great. Good fun.
It's funny because I owned an Elise, a Lotus
yeah.
Elise years ago, and that video was the very first time that I have been in one since I owned it. And so it was like a return to, I actually bought my Elise in California and drove it all the way back to Georgia where I was living at the time. And that was a horrible experience, obviously. But it was like a nice return to, to the world that I had lived in before. But those are fun little cars if you kind of want to put up with a very little car, very stripped down with not much going
on. Again, we spent a lot of time working with people, especially in Britain, and so I worked on that car, and then the next generation vehicle after that. So the Monza, we got fired because we said things like, "Well, wait a minute, what do you mean? What do you mean we can't drive the car from or drag the car?" It was being dragged on a trolley from the body shop into the paint shop. It's raining all the time. But anyhow, we lost that job too.
That is such a British thing. That is such a British thing. I have friends who work for I have friends who work for Land Rover who've told me similar stories that's exactly the kind of stuff they did. They would go out, the bodied ones would go outside, and it was just like, oh my God. But quality was not the forte, and still is not.
Well, I haven't been to Britain for a long time, but almost everything's owned by Indians or Chinese now. So I doubt very much that they're going to really get into the tinkering or mucking around mode. Yeah,
that's probably a good thing given the quality of most of those cars.
Well, I can tell you for sure. Like I said, I had the Jaguar, the 150S type. That was a pretty good car. It only let me down a few times. But you expect it, right? So, but anyway, when I was working for Ford, they bought a Jaguar, and I was in finance staff at that. I'd moved from manufacturing and engineering into finance staff, and so at the last minute, they said, "Hey, why don't you go and see the engine plant?" Because I was an engine engineer. So I went to the engine plant. I couldn't believe my eyes. The guys were bringing in their own tools. It was really, they didn't have any tools and whatnot. So, yeah, it was really something.
When was this? When was this?
Oh, that was in the 80. I want to say 86 or 87, something like that. Yeah.
Long after it shouldn't have been happening anymore.
Well, it
basically.
Shouldn't have, but it did. I was really shocked.
Crazy.
Yeah. So, anyways, I said, run your ass off. Don't buy this, and they bought it anyway. What can you? Mr. Peterson was running the show, and he liked Jaguars, so we wound up with a Jaguar. They bought a lot of stuff in England. They bought Aston Martin for a while too. Yeah.
Aston Martin. They had Volvo for a while.
I had nothing to do with it. Yeah.
It was like a bizarre accumulation of all these brands that really didn't make any sense, but they were doing it. Yeah. I'm sure they lost money on every one of them.
Oh, I'm positive of that. I can guarantee you, sinking money into they also owned the Land Rover group, and that wasn't when I found that out. We had worked real hard to shine them up. And then I found out that my old alma mater bought them, and I'm thinking, these guys are never going to talk to me again. I can't believe it. Well, who bought that? Why did they do this? I wasn't part of that kind of stuff. Yeah.
It was such a bizarre time
Yeah.
when that was happening, and remember General Motors bought Saab
Yeah.
and invested heavily in Subaru, and there were all these
Yeah.
bizarre decisions being made. The automakers were trying to consolidate their power in any way they could.
Well, they had a lot of money, and they wanted to get into the press, I guess, because I remember, that was when about the same time with the big merger of equals, Daimler and
Yep,
Chrysler. That was
yep,
a buy
yep,
completely. Yeah, and a lot of people
right.
didn't like that idea at all. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, that was a huge, huge, huge
yeah.
deal. Yeah, that's true. I guess all that stuff was happening right around the same time, so it didn't seem as crazy because Chrysler was shacking up with the Germans, and so General Motors had its, Saab and all these other brands, and Ford was like, "We gotta get in on this." I mean, in retrospect, it was not the worst idea. It gave Ford instant credibility among luxury brands because Mercury and Lincoln didn't have any, and so it was like, "Okay, well, now they have Rover and they have, Volvo," and but it's so expensive to do what you need to do to get those things going in the right
Well,
direction,
the only one that
and
really
they
made
never
sense
did.
was Aston Martin, because all they needed was electronics and electric. Everything else was fabulous for them. They had I think it was a Cosworth engine in it. Transmission came from, I think it came from General Motors. Anyway, I got a chance to drive one of those for a little bit, and man, I loved that. And it's James Bond's car. You get instant credits right off the bat. So yeah, but there's just tons of. But I noticed that on your Cars and Bids, is that, yeah, Cars and Bids. You've got a tremendous number of what I would classify as vintage race cars. Is that kind of like is that a focus then for you, or is it just that you attracted the right guys? Or?
Well, we only sell cars from the 1980s and newer. So there's nothing older on Cars and Bids than the 1980s. So there's generally, some 80s, 90s type stuff a lot of the time, but not anything like that I think you would consider probably vintage.
Okay. Well, what I looked at looked kind of, you've got I think it was a GT, Ford GT. I could have bought. Oof. Sometimes you think, how stupid could I have been? I could have got one for about 80 grand about 10 years ago, and I didn't do it. They've gone up in price quite a bit. So I think it was like almost
Yep,
300
they
grand.
really have.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have an '05 GT and I love it more than anything in the world. It's an amazing car, but I bought it 5 years ago for 225, and I thought I was overpaying. And now they're crazy. They've gotten even crazier since then. Everything has. The whole world has gone crazy, but those cars included.
So you've got so many cars that people aspire to. What car do you aspire to?
I don't know. I kind of have everything I want. I got this Carrera GT, which is kind of my all-time dream car. That I think the greatest Porsche of all time and one of the greatest drivers cars ever made. And there's nothing else that I really, really, really want. I really wanted a Ferrari F40, but those have gotten just way too
Yeah.
expensive. Those are gone. That's never going to
Well,
happen, which is sad.
so I had to look at your how much somebody guessed at how much you had sold, and it looks like it's like almost 300 million or something like that. 10%, you can get a Ferrari if you want to.
Well, so we take
Oh,
4.5%.
really?
That's
Oh.
our fee, and yeah, and then which is one of the advantages to like a traditional auction, like a physical one in person. And then obviously we have some employees, so I have to pay those people. But an F40 is now like a $3 million car, so I think those days are gone. Unfortunately, as much as I wish I could have.
You wonder what people do with them. I mean, I was just looking at one of my crew here. They Carl, he bought I can't remember what it was, an old Cadillac, I think a 1971 or something like that Cadillac, and he's restoring it, and this guy had it in a barn, but it was under the barn, so the the barn's here, and then like I came from a farm, and if you have what do you call them, dairy cows, you have them standing up here, and then there's a grid in the floor, and they're gonna poop. So it goes through the grid and the floor, and then it goes down into this pit, and then you put water in it, and then every once in a while you bring a guy in, he sucks it out, and then you spray it all over the field and make all the neighbors go crazy with the smell. But that car was sitting in the pit, and so they had to drag it out. There was like 1 inch on either side of it. How the guy got it in is beyond me, but he pulled it out, and it's covered in dirt and muck and everything else. I always think at the end of the day, some guys, probably an old guy older, maybe even older as me, and they buy these things and then stick them in a barn, and somebody discovers it 30 years from now and wonders why didn't he put it in a barn? I mean,
right. Yeah, I wonder about that too. I think about that all the time. How did all those cars get there? Why did someone just stop using it? If it had value, why not just sell it at the time? It's never made any sense to me. But people do it a lot. It happens all the time.
Well, I'm just wondering, do people, well, if it's only from the 80s, well, even if it was 1980 and you toss it in a barn, it could be kind of dirty by now. So
stuff is already, 80s cars are becoming barn finds
Really?
already. There's a lot of that. I mean, 80s has been it's been 40 plus years since
Yeah,
the beginning
yeah.
of the 80s. So there's still parked stuff, and it's sitting. Yeah, that happens.
Well, I've been looking at. I was given a whole bunch of questions and whatnot. We haven't asked one of them, but I don't care because I got another question for you. I saw that you're an economics major. You got a degree in economics and whatnot, and
That's
so
right, yeah.
how did you swing into the car deal? Are you an enthusiast and you tear them apart and put them back together, or how did that happen?
I just always loved cars. My entire life, I really, really, really loved cars. And so, my parents insisted that I go to college, which was, of course, the right decision. And I got that degree, but I really wanted to go and work in cars. So as soon as I finished the degree, I went to work for Porsche. Their corporate headquarters was in Atlanta, which is where I went to school. And that's kind of started it off. And I've basically done everything. I've worked at dealerships, and I've worked for corporate, and now I've been on like the journalism side and the entertainment side. And now we're selling them again on the site on Cars and Bids. So it's been kind of like I've done it all in the car world,
Oh,
basically.
cool. What about like I say, becoming your own mechanic or doing a restoration on a car? Have you ever tried anything like that?
No, largely because in my current life situation, operating a giant YouTube channel and the Cars and Bids, realistically, I don't have time. But my dream is that in a 10-year, 15-year time span, that's kind of all I do. That I just kind of sit at home and kind of tinker with my bizarre vehicles, and not have to don't go on YouTube at all, and just kind of sit there and do what I want to do.
So
We'll
you're
see.
you're shooting for Jay Leno's position, is that it?
I guess so. I guess.
Yeah, I
So.
actually that
I
is
guess
one
I
of the
want to
questions.
feel like this.
Apparently, you were on Jay Leno's show. How did that go? How was that?
Yeah, I've met Jay a few times. I've been on his show. I've reviewed one of his cars, and then I've been on his show a couple, 3, 4 times maybe, and he's great. He he's a cool dude to hang out with, and he's a big car enthusiast, and obviously, but he's also like a legitimate car enthusiast. Like he will talk to you about cars and like have the conversations that like car people have, and like he's not like putting it on. And so it's kind of cool. Now that I've gotten to know him, like we've done this 3, 4 times together, we like it's not like, hey, so where are you from? Like we are literally like having the real kind of car conversations, and it's kind of neat.
Well, we were supposed to do something with Jay during the COVID thing, and that collapsed. I don't know exactly how it happened, but there was union issues. Apparently, there's a lot of stuff that goes on that he's kind of restricted in. So we never got it. But I'd love to walk through his barn or whatever.
Oh,
That collection he's got is
yeah.
huge.
It's huge. It's amazing. He took me through it. It's quite something to walk around and see it all. And there's the McLaren F1, sitting up there in the front, just like, oh my God. And all the Countachas and Miras, and then all these vintage cars that nobody's ever heard of from the 20s, that brands that went out of business after 2 years, but there's something special about it that's meaningful to Jay. And you go, it's quite something. It really is quite a group of vehicles,
Yeah,
motorcycles too.
he's got, well, doesn't he have bicycles as well? He's got a tremendous amount of breadth.
Everything that he could find. He's got literal full-time employees sitting there like working on this stuff. So everything he wants, he's got. It's a cool setup.
Yeah, it's great. So, okay, so let me go back and ask that question again. You walk through Jay Leno's garage and you see all these cars. Did one stick out?
I mean, it's impossible not to say that the McLaren F1 is the car that everybody looks at and dreams about and all that, because that car has become such a legend. Um, Jay has two cars that I also have, the Carrera GT and the Ford GT, and so it's always nice to like get that validation from Jay. But it's also, he's got. I'm becoming more of a vintage Lambo fan, and he's got the Mura and the Countach, which are really special cars to see. Um, it's an amazing range of collection, like everything from like the brand new Ford GT that just came out and McLaren P1, which are new cars, to like steam powered stuff from the old fire trucks from the 1800s. I mean, it's like, wow, this is really everything.
Well, he's got something that I I really liked. He has one of the was it I think it's either a V16 or a V12 Cadillac. It was a doctor's car.
Yeah.
So it's got two seats and a rumble seat. And man, that to me is just absolutely, I don't even know how you'd see to drive, because the damn hood is like 30 feet long.
Yeah.
You need binoculars to see the hood ornament. Yeah.
He's got a couple cars like that, like very vintage, like lux. In their time,
Yeah.
you would buy a chassis and a powertrain, and then you'd get a coach builder to make. And he's got a couple cars like that are just these massive things that are laughable by modern standards, but just incredibly cool. And back in that era, luxury was defined as the craftsmanship. Rather, these days, luxury is all about the technology, or whatever. But the craftsmanship on those cars, the brass and the polished metals, and really amazing.
Well, I've seen a couple of restoration jobs before and after. And when you see the after, especially when it comes to the upholstery and whatnot, the original has got all this hand stitching. I mean, like, so there's like roses stitched in, and how they do all this stuff is beyond me. How much it must have cost? How long did it take? I mean, you might wait a year to get the upholstery done with all of this stuff. Yeah,
Probably. I think that's exactly what it was. But again, like, that was what luxury was. Like these days, you get into a car and it's like, oh, it's a luxury car because it has a big screen. Back then it was like, look at this like hand woven seat. Like that, it was how you would brag to your friends.
Yeah. A lot of them looked like they were made like carpets, because when you said woven, that may just be it. I mean, maybe they had somebody on a loom cranking these things out.
Probably.
So let me ask these questions that I was given here. There is one here that I wanted to ask, and everybody else wrote the same thing down. The Doug store. How do you create the Doug score? So
so
is it a numeric thing or?
Yeah, it's out of 100. So there's 10 categories, and you can get 1 out of 10 for each possible category. And there's like weekend categories and daily categories, so like, fun versus like, usable. And it just sort of hit me at one point that I needed something to help get people to watch the entire video, because they would watch my early part where I talked through all the little quirks of the car, and then they would turn off and not really watch when I drove, and there would be attrition. And so I score them at the end, and it became very popular. Now there's a lot of people who are really into it. And the cool thing about it is I've now reviewed so many cars that you can do pretty good, like thorough comparisons. And so the Doug score really allows you to kind of see like where a car actually stacks up against other similar cars I've reviewed, because at this point I've reviewed most of them, and so it's like actually useful
So
information.
I was wondering, is there some method to the scoring, or is it kind of your intuition, or how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, some of them are objective, like acceleration score is based on the 0 to 60 time. The practicality score is based on the number of seats and the cargo capacity, that sort of thing. But yeah, some of it is like my handling score is based on how I actually feel the car handles, that sort of thing. It's kind of a combination of
Yeah,
both.
we have a score. We use it for looking at the cars. It's called an FFQ. It's very similar to the QZ audit that BMW uses for scoring a car. It's an end of line score. It takes us 3 or 4 days to do it, but it looks at all the gaps and everything. And I was just wondering if there was something, because everything here is math. There's no.
Right. No, it's not as it's there's a lot more subjectivity to it in
Ah,
my world.
well, I don't know. I personally looked at some of the scores that you have with cars that I've actually driven, and they're, as far as I'm concerned, that's why I wanted to know. Maybe he's got some trick here that make it so that I can do it as accurate as him. So let's see. Oh yeah, and then I've got the one. I'm not sure if we even asked this question already, but Munro, I mean, we're in the business of engineering and designing and whatever cars. And then we went into YouTube because we were going to go broke if we didn't. We had nothing to do. So, but in your case, you went in the opposite direction. You went from YouTube and into the car industry. What prompted that? How did you come up with that?
There was just there were a lot of factors, but I mean, I really think that the biggest one was that I was worried that, I didn't want to completely be beholden to YouTube for all my success for the rest of my life. And so it was important to me to do, to try to branch out and create a business where I had more control over it, but also that I could like finally have something for my audience to like do and buy, as opposed to just watching my videos where, eventually they'll probably find somebody else, somebody better or something different. And so that was kind of the impetus for it. It was like, what can I do to take my audience that is so huge and like go do something different with them that's off this platform?
So, so I noticed that you've got a young son, right? Well, 4 or 5 years old
Yeah.
or something. So
He's two
he's
now.
what?
Yeah.
He's
He's
only
only two.
two.
He's
Oh
only
wow,
two. Yeah.
so even younger. Wow. I was going to ask what plans you've got for him, but maybe you have to wait until he's 3.
He loves cars. I've never seen anything like it. He loves cars, and he can identify all the
Oh
cars
wow.
already. I'm not trying to teach him. I don't want to be one of those parents who like pushes their thing on their kid. Like you're gonna play football, son. I didn't want to do that, so I've kind of held back. But growing up in this house, there was no way he couldn't. There's cars everywhere and all that, and so he can identify. He's a year and 8 months old, right? And he can identify. We're walking on the street, Mercedes, Volvo, Volvo. And I'm like, oh my God. But the funny thing is he doesn't know colors, right? I can't teach him colors. So he doesn't know blue, right? He has no clue. I've tried and tried. I can't teach him blue, but he knows Chevy.
Very
He can
good.
say Chevy, Chevy. And I'm like, oh my God, this is ridiculous.
That's amazing.
This is not what I was
That's absolutely brilliant. I love that. That's great.
got a bright future in the car
Yeah.
world, I guess.
No, I think that's. I think well, the reason I'm asking is because I've got 2 grandchildren now. One a little too young. She was born in December, and then a 4-year-old that. My wife is Polish, and Ziki Oleta means like wild monkey or whatever, and that's him. So I always like hear stories about kids that are, well, kids in general. So I was just wondering how your son is taking, but chip off the old block or something. I'm sure. Sure.
Apparently, I guess I had all these Hot Wheels cars just kind of sitting around. I don't know why. And so he found them one day, and then he wouldn't let us not car box, car
Oh
box,
yeah.
car box. He would yell
Yeah.
at us. And so then we had to give him the car box, and now he took them all out of the boxes, which is fine. I didn't really care. But now he's just, all he does is play cars, dada, play cars.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Those little Matchbox things, I remember those, stepping on them in the middle of the night in bare feet. I'm telling you what, that's when you say, that car box, half of it's going right now.
That is exactly the situation. Every time I go up to bed, I think to myself, I better clean this crap up because I know I'm gonna step, or you push it to the side of the room because I know I'm gonna step on this thing and it's not gonna be good.
Well, so the big question is, has your wife got a sense of humor when it comes to this stuff? Because
I feel bad for my wife, right? Because so she spends the first year of his life breastfeeding, and she's holding him, and I'm running the business at this point, so she's doing a lot of the work, and now we got a big investment in the business, and so I got more time on my hands, and I'm just spending a lot more time with my son. And all he wants to do is play with cars, and so she's like she's quickly trying to learn, right? Like what a Nissan is and all this stuff, because she's never cared. But meanwhile, after she did all this work with him as a little infant, he's now like all he wants to do is hang out with daddy because daddy knows all the cars. Daddy will play cars. And I feel so bad for my wife. I don't think it was inevitable. I don't think it was ever going to go any other direction.
My guess is that there's going to be another child in your life. And it better be a girl. You have to take those tests or something. Yeah.
Right.
So, oh, well, this is another one that I kind of wanted to know about as well. So we're entering a new era. And I didn't notice any electric vehicles on your list of cars that you own. What do you think of electrification?
I think it's the future, and I think the next car I own has got to be electric. I'm actually, it's funny because I'm having conversations literally now with builders about some changes to my garage to put in an EV charger, among a bunch of other stuff. It's definitely the future. I love a lot of things about electric cars. I think that the recent crop of electric cars has proven to car enthusiasts who were skeptical for a while that electric cars can be fun and enjoyable and exciting. And I think there was a concern when the Nissan Leaf and the Chevy Volt were the only electric cars, and it was like, is our future just going to be boring hatchbacks that kind of look weird? The answer is no. Like, actually, they're now supercars that are electric, and Teslas, of course, as you know, and all that. I think that there is a fun future of electric cars.
Well, I'll tell you, I have a Rivian, and but I don't have Rivian stock. I have to tell you, I don't know why it is. I got to say this shit. But anyway, I don't have a Rivian car. We don't, get tips or whatever from. But I will tell you flat. I've been driving off-road since I was 13. I've had Jeeps, and nothing can compare with driving that car off road.
That car is unbelievable. Unbelievable. And some of the stuff that you worry about when you're off-roading, like snapping an axle, like that's my biggest thing, is like snapping some serious like a lot of that stuff, that car just doesn't, it's just a simpler thing. It doesn't
exactly. I'm telling you flat. I took that thing over logs. We took it out to what's the name of that place? Oh, okay, some place. Anyways, they have a cement mountain, and they have like a literal. They just put concrete over the top of a hill, and logs. I don't know, 4 or 5 feet in diameter. And man, I couldn't believe that car. I've never had anything like it. And none of the guys, Eric's standing right here. Do you think I could get those guys to get in a car with me? Not a chance. I went down the 3-wheel, the little quad track. Okay, so I had to go down sideways because one tire had to be stuck on this bank, and then the other tire could be on the actual track. That thing handled so well. I couldn't, and I had a riot. My wife looked.
No, it's amazing. It's amazing. I agree. It's unbelievable. And so there's this fear of like, oh, will electric cars be fun? I mean, that car helps to answer it. And the crazy thing about that car is you get off the off-road track, and then you can line up next to a 911.
And blow it away. Doesn't that just makes you feel so wonderful? Yeah.
Right. Like, how could we possibly? It literally does everything in a way that nothing can, or we were told that nothing could. You have to compromise here if you're going to excel here. Well, maybe you don't. That
I
car
like
can do it all.
constant torque.
Let's just see if
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
right.
so on the way, I had to go to a doctor, and my wife took the Rivian in for whatever it needed, and I was driving the Model 3, and I came from the doctor's place, and I'm just trying to merge on, and some I don't. In LA, they have kind of like Detroit type drivers, okay, where guns are pulled out and people are too aggressive as far as I'm concerned. So anyway, all I want to do is get on the express. I want to get on to 75. So I'm coming along, and here's some guy in an older Firebird. Obviously, he thinks it's really hot stuff. So I got my turn signal on, and this guy, he sees me coming in, right? And then he's matching my speed, like he's gonna run me off the road. And I'm going, crap. Click, click. So I took it off of comfort and put it on, because not everybody's really excited about having it in sport mode. So I put it on to sport mode, and I'm sitting there, and I'm we're going about 80 miles an hour. And this car, I mean, it just explodes when you want to make it go. And I look over at him, and then I trounce it. And the thing goes from 80 to 110 in like that fast. And I pull in front of him. And this clown, okay, so I only want to do is get on. I'm not really interested in any kind of stupid shit. And he pulls right next to me. He's going back and forth like this, like, what, are you kidding me? I mean, this would be like beating up a child. I'm not gonna try and take it. This is stupid.
That's exactly right. I mean, there's almost nothing that car won't be. What's the point of even? We already know what's going to happen. I feel that way when I drive my Ford GT, and like a Model 3 Performance tries to get up next to me, and it's like, dude, you're going to win.
I'm not
like,
taking that. I mean, really, why would I want to self-inflict pain? I'm not a masochist. Right.
Exactly right. I'm not going to participate in this. Plus, like, okay, so you could win a drag race on the freeway. I would still rather have the Ford GT. Although in the Rivian's case, I would rather have the Rivian. But like, it's not really worth. That's the thing about electric vehicles. It's like a cheat code in some cases.
Well, you know what? I looked up when I saw that you had the Land Rover, the Disco, or the Defender. I thought, I wonder how much those things are worth. So they're pulling in $100,000. I mean, you could buy a Rivian for about $80,000 and have something. Yeah, and if the kids want to, you can roll the windows down, kids, and they'll roll back up too. Right. Daddy will like that. Yeah.
There has never been a greater disparity between what a car costs and what it is actually worth than those Land Rover Defenders. That is the single biggest gap between like goodness and cost in the entire car.
Well, this is where what's a car worth? Well, it depends. How much does a guy want it? That's what it boils right down to.
And the other thing is, like, for me, I bought mine for $60,000, and I think it's probably worth 80, low 80s now.
I bet it's worth more than that. I was looking at some and I did the exploded thing or blew them up so I could see them, and I'm going, I can see problems here because you hang around with those things any length of time. Yikes! Yeah.
Oh yeah, no. I just spent $13,000 this off season fixing mine and getting it how it needed to be, and chasing down electrical faults and all this stuff. That's every.
So, what do you think of the Cybertruck coming down the pike?
I mean, we'll see. Tesla's great advantage for years was that they were the first mover on a lot of these cars, and the Cybertruck, they're certainly not. And so it's a little bit disappointing how that rolled out, I think. We have Rivian out, we have the Hummer EV out, the Lightning is obviously already out. Cybertruck, it's how many years away is it still?
They're claiming that it's going to be in September. And I'm hoping so, because that is the car that I like. You were talking about maybe in 15 years you're going to, retire and fix cars or something like that. Let me give you a tip. I thought about that about 40 years ago and didn't quite work out for me. So hopefully you'll do better. But I used to like to go hunting a lot, and to me the Cybertruck is absolutely the best opportunity for me to have exactly what I'd like if I went into the woods. And so I'm hoping we bought those cars early. We bought 5, I think, or something like that, or put a deposit on 5. Hopefully, I can get one and at least get one hunt out of the thing. But for me, these cars are slightly different. So I think the Rivian is a great off-road vehicle. I think that I don't think there's anything that could get in its path. And I also think that it's a daily drive. It is a daily drive for us. And so that combination doesn't happen very often. And if you ask my wife, she'll tell you flat. When I had the Rubicon, especially the one with a soft top, she hated it. She didn't like the noise. She wasn't interested in the ride. It was a bouncy ride and whatnot. The Rivian, you put that thing on comfort mode and jack her up or whatever. The thing is it's just a brilliant ride. And then the Cybertruck, I think, is, like I say, if you're a sportsman, this is going to be the truck for you. And the Lightning, it doesn't have anything like the other guys. That Lightning is the best work truck on the planet ever. I don't know if you ever heard, but that Lightning saved our ass. We had this great big conference / workshop for one of our international customers. People flew in from China and Britain, Germany, China, everywhere, right? And they all come in, and there's no power in Auburn Hills. Some big storm or whatever knocked out a substation, and we got no power. And we drove the Lightning in, plugged it in, and we're in business. Show me how I could. I mean, right there, that thing paid for itself. I mean, it was off for 3 days. There's no power on. These guys are going to sit around and twiddle it. That would not happen. And what are we going to do? Where are we going to take it? Well, I mean, we've got their stuff was big. We're not going to take that and put it in their hotel room and say, oh, well, we'll do the analysis here. That's not going to happen. And I'm telling you, the Lightning, without a question of a doubt, is the best work truck that's ever been designed, ever.
No, it's really impressive.
So you mentioned the Hummer. So what possessed to do that? What do you think of the Hummer? Have you had one?
It's amazing. I think it's so cool.
Wow.
I would never own one. I mean, it's absurd. Like it's for a certain type of person, which I am not. But I think it's cool as hell. Like, it's a convertible. It's fast. It looks ridiculous. It can do a lot of stuff. Like, I think, like, objectively, it's a pretty cool truck. If you feel like you can pull it off, if you feel like your persona can handle it. I'm not a Hummer EV guy, but I love them. I think they're such a ridiculously
well.
Cool
There you
truck.
go. Hey, this is your opportunity. You got the convertible, and you can ditch the Defender. I mean,
oh God, I would give anything. I would give anything to switch out the Defender for a Hummer EV. But then you got to be a Hummer EV driver. And you just look at those things on the road. You ever see those things on the road? I see them here and there, and I'm like, no thanks. I don't want to do that.
Well, you can. What? Who was it that they used to drive those things around? The Arnold Schwarzenegger, the Governor. Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're tall. That's half the battle right there. I can't do it.
All right, Sandy, so we've hit the hour mark, and you didn't ask the one question that I wrote down.
Which was?
So we get press vehicles, and some of the research I do is I watch Doug's videos because he always gets cars before we do. So the question was the last one there.
One of your popular reviews, elements of quirks and features.
Yeah, so how extensive is your research before you film?
Go ahead.
You'd be surprised. It's not very extensive. I do research the background of the car and kind of the history and all that stuff. What about it, the engine and everything, the trim levels, the pricing, all the stuff that you kind of need to research before you do it. But like the literal quirks and features, I only discover when I show up. And I've learned that the reason for that is that the owners of the cars, or the cars themselves, the press car, whatever, they don't know that stuff is weird. Like people who would live with something and get used to something, just they don't think it's strange. But like when I'm looking at it from the lens of what is the audience going to find interesting, I know what to look for. And so once I show up, I probably spend about 2 hours going through the car and figuring out, okay, this is worth mentioning, this. But like you ask the driver and they're like, nah, it's not, there's nothing quirky about it. And then you get there and it has like silver painted seats and it's like, that's weird. And they're like, yeah, I guess that is weird. I never really thought about it. And it's like, well, okay, you're not trustable.
Yeah, exactly.
Get out of here.
So I don't know if you ever watched our stuff, but anyway, when they bring me up to a truck or a car or whatever, it is the first time I've ever seen it. I don't do any research, and as a matter of fact, a couple of times they brought me up and said, "Hey, we got something you want to have a look at." And I remember on screen walking up to the Mustang and going, "Oh, 4 doors. That's not a Mustang." And, walking around and these guys are taping me while I'm doing all this stuff. And then, then I got in it and I actually I like the car a lot. I started driving it. And then you see, Sandy's, bleh, he hates the car and he's throwing mud at it. And then
Right.
I drove it around
Right.
and whatnot. And I said, "Hey, can we buy this one? Because we get cars to drive for free, but we don't, that's about it." After that,
Right.
yeah. So anyway, I think we've answered all the questions. Now, did we answer it complete enough, Eric? Or
Yes, you got my question in, so I'm good.
okay, great. Okay, now we can both be happy. Oh, break out the booze. Yeah. So
Well, I appreciate you having me on.
wow,
Thank you
this
so
was
much.
great. I've seen you on the videos and whatnot, but you're a lot more you're a lot more fun being involved instead of just watching you. This was great. I really
Well,
I
thank
really
you.
enjoyed this. So I'd like to thank you sincerely,
Thank you.
and I don't know what else to say except thanks. It was great. Thank you, Doug. I really appreciate it. I really do.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I
Thank you.
appreciate it. Thank you.
All righty. Okay, we'll see you then. Bye bye.